Home Amateur Museum Theater presents Parson Brownlow versus Landon Haynes. Hi, and welcome to this edition of At Home Amateur Museum Theater. Today we'll be talking about Parson William Ganaway Brownlow and Landon Haynes. Now, in our story, the part of Parson Brownlow will be played by this dragon, and the part of Landon Haynes will be played by this dragon. Now, Parson Brownlow, Parson, of course, was a nickname. He was a Methodist circuit rider. He would also go on to be a newspaper editor and the governor of Tennessee following the Civil War. Landon Haynes, also a newspaper editor, also a politician, and he's going to be a senator for the Confederacy representing Tennessee during the Civil War. Now, these two guys didn't agree on a lot of things, and they're going to have a fight on Main Street, Jonesborough on May 14th, sometime in the 1840s.
Have you ever noticed that all your videos include fights?
That's just life on the mean streets of Jonesborough. William Ganaway Parson Brownlow was born in Wythe County, Virginia in 1805. In 1825, Brownlow attended a camp meeting near Sulphur Springs, Virginia, where he experienced a dramatic spiritual rebirth. In the fall of 1826, he attended the annual meeting of the Holston Conference of the Methodist Church in Abingdon. He applied to join the traveling ministry, commonly called circuit riders, and was admitted that year. Brownlow cut his teeth in the newspaper business during 1838, writing for the short-lived Elizabethton Republican and Manufacturers Advocate. The rising Elizabethton attorney, T.A.R. Nelson, suggested that Brownlow should launch a newspaper to support Whig Party candidates in the upcoming elections. Brownlow and his partner Mason Lyon launched their weekly Tennessee Whig on Thursday, May 16, 1839, and within several weeks, Brownlow and Lyon would rebrand their new weekly newspaper as the Elizabethton Whig, starting with the June 13, 1839 edition of the newspaper. Landon Haynes was born near Elizabethton, Tennessee. He attended the Anderson School in Carter County and graduated from Washington College near Jonesborough in 1838. Returning to Elizabethton, he read law with T.A.R. Nelson. When Nelson moved to Jonesborough in 1840, Haynes followed him to continue his study of law. He was admitted to the bar in late 1840. So to understand why Parson Brownlow and Landon Haynes didn't get along, you have to know a little bit about American politics in the 1840s. Now, during that time, your largest parties are the Democrats, sometimes called the Democratic Republicans, and they're largely represented by Andrew Jackson and the policies during his presidency. They're against, the National Bank. You have a lot of farmers who support that party because Jackson's administration really helped enfranchise the common everyday white male. Now, in opposition to the Democrats, you have the Whigs.
Why were they called the Whigs?
Why indeed?
Oh, because they wear wigs.
No, this is for something else. Now, the Whig Party, like I said, was all in opposition to the Democrats, and they started in the 1830s, and they're going to be for the American system, which was for protective tariffs, building infrastructure, and supporting the National Bank, which Jackson is, going to do away with. Your Whig supporters are going to be entrepreneurs, the planter class, and then especially in your northern cities, your rising urban middle class. Now, another word you're going to hear throughout this video when it comes to politics is Locofoco, or Locofocoism.
Don't just make up words.
That is a perfectly cromulent word.
The Locofocos were a faction of the United States Democratic Party that existed from 1835 until the mid-1840s. In general, Locofocos supported Andrew Jackson and Martin Van Buren and were for free trade, greater circulation of specie, legal protections for labor unions and against paper money, financial speculation, and state banks. The name Locofoco derives from Locofoco, a kind of friction match. It originated when a group of New York Jacksonians used such matches to light candles to continue a political meeting after Tammany men tried to break up the meeting by turning off the gas lights.
Now, Parson Brownlow is going to move to Jonesborough in 1840. He had originally lived in Elizabethton, but he came to Jonesborough to continue publishing his paper, The Whig. He was a very opinionated man, and he's going to share his opinions very openly in his newspaper. And actually, I think who can help us shed a light on this is Victorian Anne. So let me just, I can't call her because she lives in the 1800s. Oh, wait, hold on. She knows about Parson Brownlow better than anybody else. All right. Let me just send this letter to her real quick, and we'll see what she says. Oh, she wrote back. And what do you know? Victorian Anne's able to meet with us. All right. So you're going to want to wear this mask.
Oh, because of the coronavirus?
Well, and because it's the 1800s, so there's cholera and tuberculosis and smallpox and just a lot of diseases. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. Now, 21st Century Anne said that you all might need a little bit more information about our dear friend, Parson Brownlow. And I just so happen to have this report he wrote on Jonesborough in 1844. Jonesborough is not Baltimore, nor is it the seat of the federal government. Yet, it is all sorts of a place. Take it by and large, having some things to boast of, some to regret, and others to be ashamed of. Jonesborough's institutions of learning, consisting of a male and a female academy, at which collectively there are now about 200 students, tend in one small degree to promote the prosperity of the town. Then, as a church-going place, Jonesborough aspires to preeminence, there being the factories of 3 sects in full blast: New School Presbyterians, Methodists, and Baptists, among all of whom it is fair to presume there are some noble-hearted fellows and pious souls and some dirty Locofocos dogs, cloaking their villainy with hypocritical pretensions to much godliness. Our town is located in a sinkhole, surrounded by hills, and until recently, we have exhibited more mud and filth in our streets than any little town could boast of in this end of the state, wintering our cows under our porches and emptying our slop buckets into our front streets. At one point in time in December, there were about 3 fords or crossing places on Main Street. But our citizens have nobly commenced the work of cleaning our streets, and upon a scale worthy of their just importance. They have much of the filth in piles on Main Street, which seem to be destined to stand as a lasting ornament to the place, a blessing to the community, and a monument of the liberality and enlightened views of the town authorities. Jonesborough contains no less than 6 blacksmith shops. There are 3 tan yards in operation, with the promise of 1 or 2 more soon to be started, which shows that these branches of business are carried on with much energy. There is one doggery, beside a great deal of the corn burnt is drank in private families and kept concealed from the church and the world. There is also a respectable business doing in all the other ordinary crimes of towns and villages. There are now 2 large Sunday schools, each having the rise of 100 scholars, and which meet regularly every Sabbath, one at the Methodist, the other at the Presbyterian Church, where they are taught Methodism and New Schoolism. There is also a large temperance society, 1/3 of the members which, mostly of the Locofocos stripe, have gone back to their vomiting again and their wallowing in the mire.
And is not to be disguised, there is likewise a Masonic lodge in Jonesborough, which is composed of a mixture of the best citizens of the town and county, and of the most depraved rascals in the place. In the mercantile line, there is an extensive business doing in Jonesborough, and goods are commanding cash readily at from 50 to 150 per centum. Further particulars relative to our mercantile operations, the closeness of the merchants will not permit us to give through our advertising columns. It is perhaps, however, just for us to state that of the 7 stores now in blast, 5.5 of them are owned and conducted by Whigs. The anti-bank and anti-credit party having suspended operations, rather than call on gentlemen in the eastern cities for further indulgence, till they shall have paid up the old score. Then again, there is what is termed the professional line of business, law, medicine, and divinity, and all of these departments our town goes it. Show how, or somehow else, in the mysterious ways of Providence, it turns out that no lawyer capable of business in all this country is to be found in the Locofoco ranks but here. We have T.R.R. Nelson, John A. Aiken, and William Henry Maxwell, strong Whigs, who will promptly and efficiently attend to all business entrusted to their care. In the medical line, we have Doctors Vance, Cosson, Cunningham, Outlaw, and Embry. And next week, we expect to have Hunt among us in all 6, 5 Whigs, and 1 in italics, a Democrat. Upon the whole, our medical faculty were compared with any town in this end of the state. In the way of preachers, we have a resident Presbyterian, Methodist, and Baptist, each seeking to build up his own sect and managing like politicians, while all pretend to be perfectly disinterested. Beside there are 2 ex-parsons who regularly visit the town, but for the want of them papers, they are rendered powerless. It must not be forgotten that we have 2 taverns, the one kept by a very accommodating Whig, the other by a very surly Locofoco. The Long Bell Tavern, with a basement story, somewhat after the fashion and taste of a Pennsylvania Dutch barn, is kept by Dr. Chester and is Locofoco headquarters. The hotel in the large brick building covered with tin is kept by Thomas B. Emerson and is Whig headquarters, a good house with accommodating inmates. As to the girls, there are a caution of them, and we honestly believe they are all candidates for matrimony. Some of them are pretty, others are just middling, and others of them are as ugly as the butt cut of original sin. And further, this deponent saith not. All right, so we've established that Brownlow and Haynes are not on the same ends of the political spectrum. Now, actually, originally, Haynes had been a Whig, but he switched over to the Democrat Party at the end of the 1830s. Now, when Brownlow moved to Jonesborough to continue publishing his paper, which became known as the Jonesborough Whig, soon after, Landon Carter Haynes also came to Jonesborough to become editor of the Tennessee Sentinel. So Brownlow became paranoid and accused Haynes of following him or stalking him. And the 2 men are going to exchange words through their respective papers. Now, Brownlow is going to refer to Haynes as a public debauchee and hypocrite and accuse him of stealing corn and selling diseased hogs. Haynes, in turn, is going to call Brownlow a wretched abortion of sin and say that he had once been flogged for stealing jewelry in Nashville. So, them's fighting words. So the 2 of them met on May 14th on that fateful day. Okay, so they get into a pretty nasty fight on Main Street, Jonesborough. And what happens is that Brownlow sees Haynes coming first. So he's going to pull his gun out. But then he doesn't think Haynes has a gun, so Brownlow decides not to pull his gun out. Instead, he pulls out his cane. And when Haynes gets closer, Brownlow just starts wailing on Haynes with his cane. Turns out, though, Haynes did have a gun, and he gets tired of being beaten by a cane eventually, so he pulls out his gun and shoots Brownlow in his thigh. And by that time, various other people in town were able to separate the two men. Now, Brownlow, even though he was shot, he did make a full recovery from his gunshot wound because he is the type of man who it is difficult to kill but easy to insult. So how did it end? Well, eventually, Parson Brownlow was going to leave Jonesborough. He's going to take his paper and move it to Knoxville in 1849, and it becomes the Knoxville Whig. Now, Landon Haynes, he had a homestead in what would become Johnson City. Tipton Haynes State Historic Site. He is the Haynes of Tipton Haynes, and he is going to be pro-Confederacy during the war, and he's going to be a senator for the state of Tennessee in the Confederate government. Now, during that time, what became Johnson City was actually called Haynesville after him, but we all know how the war turned out, so it is no longer named Haynesville today for those reasons. He is going to continue his political career and go to Memphis, and he later passes away in Memphis. Now, Parson Brownlow, his trajectory is a little different. When the Civil War is over, he is appointed by Andrew Johnson as emergency governor of the state of Tennessee because now you have these states that need to re-enter the Union. So he is appointed governor, and he moves to Nashville. Now, he is elected to a second term as governor after his appointment term runs out. But during his first term, he pretty much disenfranchised anyone who could vote at the time if they had been part of the Confederacy. So he disenfranchises a lot of people in the state of Tennessee, and he's going to fall more in line with the radical Republicans that, are the ones who try to impeach Andrew Johnson, who feel like not enough is being done to punish the South and those who fought in the Confederacy for how the Civil War turned out and how it came about to begin with. So he's not going to be popular with a lot of people in Tennessee, but he was a strong supporter of the 13th and 14th Amendment, which of course ends slavery and helps to enfranchise black males. So, he's even that makes him very unpopular with a large part of the Tennessee population, and he's going to fight a pretty prolonged war against the Ku Klux Klan for a number of years. Now, he's governor for 2 terms, and then he's going to be a senator for the state of Tennessee after that, and he passes away in 1877. Now, like I said, he is an extremely, extremely opinionated, vocal person throughout his entire life. And he kind of ends up being a pretty controversial figure. So controversial, in fact, that his portrait from when he was governor was removed from the Tennessee State House in 1987 by an act of the Tennessee government. They actually passed this in 1987 to remove his portrait from the State House because he's such a controversial figure. And today that portrait is in the Tennessee State Museum. Thanks for tuning in for this edition of At Home Amateur Museum Theater.
Whose fight are you going to talk about next week?
I don't know. Ours? Fisticuffs on Main Street?
Hold on. Let me go get my fighting wig.
See you on the mean streets of Jonesborough.